We're back at it again with another documentary reaction. Okay, we got somebody very prominent in crime. I think Gilligan is. I think that's Dublin Gangster. I think he's an Irish gangster. Correct me if I'm wrong. Put it in the comment section. But shout out to my Irish folk. You know what I'm saying? I believe that he's in Dublin. Yeah, Dublin, Ireland. Yeah. So we got John Gilligan, the life and crimes and the drug boss of John Gilligan. All right. The life and crime of drug boss John Gilligan. Yeah. Okay. So we are here to learn about what this man was on. If you go back to my past videos, you would see that I was asking questions about this man because he was like on steroids in one picture looking crazy buff, and I was like, who the hell is that? And y'all was like, John Gilligan. So I'm gonna have to tap in to John Gilligan. All right, so we here. Tap them links down below, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hey, without further ado, let's get it. Shout out to Ireland Crime Wars.
John Gilligan is one of Ireland's most notorious crime lords. He rose to prominence in the early 90s, and his gang was behind the murder of journalist Veronica Guerin. With his recent arrest in Spain, it seems Gilligan's career has come full circle, and he now finds himself operating a much smaller criminal enterprise. Not a far cry from how he began his life of crime.
John Gilligan, or Little John as he was known, grew up in Ballyfermot in Dublin, and at the age of 12 he left school and started out on his life of crime. He started robbing people. He was very into making money even at that early stage, and at the age of 14 he joined his dad on a ferry line, and at that stage apparently he got involved in a corruption racket with his dad on the ferry line, and they were stealing fares. It was in 1978 that he started out as Factory John.
They carried out, a huge number of break-ins at commercial properties targeting high-value goods like video recorders and television sets, and had stole as much as £1 million worth of goods.
When the Factory Gang were in the height of their success, they were carrying out at least one major heist a week, and John Gilligan would carry around a pistol with him. They became known as the Hole in the Wall Gang because they would use sledgehammers sometimes to make holes or break holes in factory walls in order to get in there. He would also be able to thwart the security systems. He had truck drivers and security employees on his payroll.
Yeah, from his very early days involved in criminality, he kind of proved he wasn't afraid to use threats of violence, in particular against people, so that they wouldn't give evidence or talk to Gardaí about him. And this obviously became a major tenet of his personality, and he followed this through all the way until the murder of Veronica Guerin.
He was very Machiavellian. He didn't care how he was going to achieve that wealth. He didn't care who he hurt on the way. He would even intimidate witnesses if there were trials coming up. He would intimidate jurors in order to stop trials, and a lot of the prosecutions didn't go ahead because of this.
He was behind a break-in of a large hardware store, kind of a builder-supplier type business in Enniscorthy in 1987, and the stolen goods were hidden in a yard in Ballymount. And at the time the guards had a good idea who they were after, but they didn't catch him in the act. But they actually got him then when he was actually moving the stolen goods from the Ballymount yard, and they were finally able to kind of make some charges stick.
In 1990, he was jailed for 4 years. He was in the Portlaoise maximum security prison, so he really had time to think. At that time, a lot of notorious criminals were in Portlaoise. A number of Martin Cahill's gang, Brian Meehan was in there at the time, Paul Ward was in there. He became very close to Paul Ward and Brian Meehan, and they saw him as their new godfather at the time. So he made a lot of connections. He focused his mind. He decided that at that stage he wanted to embark on a career as a drug baron.
Down here now, John Gilligan, he's about 14 feet, he's gone down to 5'6".
Prison for John Gilligan, like many criminals of that era, it was their education. Much the way some people go to college, to university for 4 years to study, he went to prison for 4 years and learned the tricks of the trade and met other criminals. They would swap information about how to develop drugs networks and how to become more advanced criminals and better criminals, essentially.
And when he was released in 1993, he
Mastermind.
decided that was it. He was never going back to prison again, that it was for mugs, that it was a major disruption to his quest to gain huge amounts of wealth. And so he embarked on his drug empire, and he would utilise the contacts that he made in Portlaoise prison in order to do that.
He had begun to make some inroads into the drugs game, and he developed a contact in Amsterdam, a Lebanese man who was going to be able to facilitate moving a large shipment of cannabis to Dublin via Cork. So he was putting his toe in the water, so to speak, but when he got out of prison, he was flat broke, he'd no money. But he realised that drugs was the way to go, and forget about these Mickey Mouse heists.
John Traynor, or the coach as he was known, he would have seen himself as a respectable businessman, but he was a con man. He had served time in prison. He knew Gilligan from his time also on the ferry line. He would have been involved in that corruption racket with Gilligan. So he was somebody who knew John Gilligan from an early age. And when John Gilligan left Portlaoise and Cork prison in 1993 and decided he wanted to embark on a drug empire, that he wanted to be a serious player, that he wanted to be a drug baron, he and John Traynor sat down and talked about it. They discussed what type of drugs they were going to import and sell. They looked at heroin, but John Traynor advised him that the courts were too hard on heroin dealers, and even the provost came down hard on those who were dealing heroin. They decided that cannabis would be the less controversial drug.
Traynor recommended they speak to another man by the name of Martin Cahill, known as the General.
Yeah,
and Martin Cahill was very eager to get involved in the financing of drug shipments because he was a very wealthy man, and this suited Gilligan and his emerging gang perfectly at the time.
Yeah, because they connected. I remember because he was mentioned in the general story, and I was like, why would he do that to him? And then I was saying that, oh yeah, because he did this, that, and the third. So yeah,
because they had no money, but they knew how to do it. And he was promised he would get this back threefold from the Gilligan Gang.
God, what is
now, he
that,
never actually
weed?
did, because he was murdered before he could be paid back in full.
Damn.
Gardaí investigating his murder believe this was a professional gangland assassination.
Yeah, man, he got gangland assassinated.
With
Yeah,
the death of the general and their debts essentially wiped out, the Gilligan Gang saw their profits skyrocket.
So they did that because
They really flooded Ireland
Wow.
with cannabis. They hit the ground running in terms of setting up drug networks, importation, particularly from the Netherlands. And they amassed a huge amount of money. I think it's estimated around 20 million altogether.
There was one occasion when Fatso Mitchell was pulled in by the guards, and when he's been interviewed, he complained that there was reports that he was making 60,000 a week, and he said it was nothing like that. It was only 30,000 a week. I mean, the younger members of the gang were getting known about town. They were hanging out in the trendy nightclubs, doing cocaine, dressing in designer clothes. They weren't shy about advertising how wealthy they were becoming, and they were pretty cocky. They were fairly sure that they were untouchable at that stage.
And while Gilligan's gang were not
Smart,
unique
bro.
in their blatant displays of wealth, it brought them to the attention of one of the country's leading crime correspondents, Veronica Guerin.
Well, Veronica Guerin came to journalism quite late in life. She had trained and worked as an accountant. She also worked in PR, and for the last 6 or 7 years of her life, she worked as an investigative journalist. She certainly made her mark. She was known to be very tenacious and determined.
Within 2 years, she had become the best known crime reporter in the country. She was drawing attention to the gangs, to the amount of drug dealing that was going on. I don't think Veronica nor the guards at the time had any idea just how much money they were making, but she certainly drew attention to their activities and to the complete ineffectiveness.
See, I get it, you doing your job, but nigga, see, like, it's okay because I'm reacting to it. I can comment on whatever. It's just all speculation at the end of the day. If you know, you know type shit. But you doing investigation, like, again, RIP to her, because I know that she, she got a hit was called out and she did get taken out. RIP to her. But I'm not getting into that. Like, why? Man.
Of the legislation at the time and how hard it was for the guards to get a handle on these guys.
She used her know-how, actually, her accountancy background. She used that to her advantage to be able to follow the money in a very effective way.
Central to her work was a network of confidential informants. One of her more frequent sources was close Gilligan associate, John Traynor.
The relationship between John Traynor and
What?
Veronica Guerin no doubt was complex. Traynor was used to playing both sides.
Wow.
Sometimes he would supply good information, sometimes he'd serve completely bogus information designed to have people look the wrong way.
The man who spoke out of both sides
So
of his
he was
mouth.
playing
He
both
couldn't be
sides.
trusted.
Wow.
Gardaí didn't trust him. Ultimately, Veronica couldn't trust him. Any journalist who dealt with him couldn't trust him.
In 1995, Veronica Guerin was on her way out to a staff party, actually, in the Sunday Independent. Her husband and her son were out of the house at the time. She heard a knock at the door. She opened the door, and there was a gunman wearing a motorcycle helmet. He pointed the gun at her head and then pointed it down at her leg, and he shot her in the thigh. She spoke openly about this. There were a number of suspects that the Gardaí were looking into in the criminal world, people that she may have been investigating, but it's understood that Veronica Guerin herself...
You didn't stop after that? You really kept going? Like, I'm just trying to figure out why. Like, bro, I get it for the greater good of the community, but my nigga, them niggas was at your doorstep. At your doorstep. I would have caught the first flight out of Dublin, Ireland that day. Yes, I'm leaving that day. I'm pulling out everything out of my savings. We buying the mover company. I'm buying something. We gonna get a cool little condo. I can't go to Europe. You gotta come over here. You gonna have to come over here. But I don't know. With the way these crime families and shit be acting, they might find your ass in America too. So it might not even be safe. You might as well just go in the witness protection program, bro. I ain't lying. No cap.
He
That's
wasn't
crazy.
friendly with her, that he wasn't her source.
Through her contact, John Traynor, Veronica Guerin knew that John Gilligan was building a substantial criminal enterprise. So she decided to come here to Jessbrook, where she hoped to interview him. She spoke with Gilligan at the door, but he quickly became nasty and he began to assault her. During the attack, he threatened to kill both her husband and her son. Veronica made her escape, but that day her fate was sealed. And 9 months later, the Gilligan Gang would murder Veronica Guerin.
Damn.
This would have been something Veronica would have often employed. This tactic was to go directly to the person she intended to write a story about and ask them to talk to her, because oftentimes it was fruitful for her. She had done it with Jerry the Monk Hutch, and he had subsequently given her interviews. So this was her approach, to go directly to the person and say, I believe this is what you're doing. What do you have to say about it? In this instance, it provoked an extremely angry reaction from John Gilligan.
She claimed that he immediately assaulted her, that he started punching her in the side of the head and face with his fists, that she eventually got back to her car and she collapsed on the ground, and he wasn't finished there. He dragged her and violently placed her back in the car, and she claimed that he then ripped her shirt because he was looking for a wire, until she eventually managed to get away and she drove off.
Veronica Guerin,
But what did you expect though? Like, I get it that it was probably peaceful with Jerry the Monk, but like, that's what I'm saying. Jerry the Monk showed that he was like the cool, sly guy. Like, you wouldn't really know what he on. You think that he doing that, but he really into politics. Cool. Like, the Monk was cool. Like, you couldn't know what he was on, bro. You know what I'm saying? And on his side too, on Gilligan's side too. Why are you crashing out and making it obvious? Now they obviously know that you doing that. Because if you wasn't doing that, why would you just up and just turn up on her like that? You know what I'm saying? So both sides is kind of slow on my part. Because I'm telling you right now, I'm not, as a journalist, after they done already came to my crib and shot me in the thigh, I'm not finna go to the boss's crib and say, hey, I feel like you selling X, Y, and Z. What do you have to say about that? And not expect for him to beat me up or beat my ass or off me right there on the spot, bro. That just wasn't smart, bro. And it wasn't smart on his part to just go up and just start whooping her ass, because now you look guilty as fuck. You know what I'm saying?
She needed medical treatment, and she obviously thought about her next step, but she went ahead and decided to press charges against Gilligan. Now, for Gilligan, when he was charged, he couldn't countenance the idea of being jailed again for even 6 months, which a man of his record, he would have been looking at that kind of sentence. For him at that stage, as we know now, would have cost millions, and he wasn't prepared to lose that kind of money. So that was certainly setting up some kind of reckoning.
Veronica wasn't going to let it go. It was a savage beating. Unfortunately, the type of person John Gilligan was, neither was he. And as far as he was concerned, that was her warning. He told her to back off. He told her not to put any articles about him in the Sunday Independent. And the result, I suppose, was a standoff between the two of them. But I suppose nobody at that stage could have anticipated just the vitriol Gilligan had for her, and for anyone trying to expose him in the newspapers and put him out of business and put him back in jail.
Gilligan's cannabis business was booming, and the threat of a prison sentence over the assault of Veronica Guerin was something he wasn't prepared to accept. He sees an opportunity to stop the case from proceeding when John Traynor hands over information about the reporter's movements.
Veronica Guerin had an inkling that John Traynor, the coach, was behind that shooting in 1995 when she was shot in the thigh. So she was very wary of him. She described him as being dangerous and very two-faced, but she continued to treat him as a source. But she was threatening to expose him, and she wanted more information on John Gilligan. And during one of their last meetings, she was talking to John Traynor, and she let it slip that she was due to appear at Menace District Court, and that would have been the 26th of June.
And this information was passed on from Traynor to the Gilligan Gang. This was something that Traynor later denied, but Gardaí said in court, and have no doubt, that it was John Traynor who passed that information on to the Gilligan Gang, and Traynor was well aware that John Gilligan wanted information about Veronica Guerin's movements because he had sworn revenge against her, essentially.
So all of a sudden they had a time, date and place where she was going to be, and obviously that accelerated the plans in the minds of the gang that now was their chance and they could do something about Veronica Guerin once and for all.
While the road layout has changed here, this is the spot where Veronica Guerin was murdered. She'd attended court that day in Menace, where she had been up on a speeding charge, but she'd got a small fine and was happy with the result. She pulled up to a red light and picked up her phone and made a call. With that, a motor...
A navy blue cap flattened. I remember...
Bro, what the hell? My fault, y'all. We gonna go back. Trying to fix something on my damn phone. Bro, watch out, gang. Oh my gosh. My fault, y'all. Just skip, bruh.
That, a motorbike pulled up alongside her car.
Gang. This joint keep fucking glitching on my phone because I'm trying to do shit on my phone too. My fault.
Inside her car, and a gunman opened fire. It's understood that Veronica died instantly.
The murder sparked a massive public outcry, and the resulting investigation was extensive and innovative.
John Gilligan definitely felt like he was untouchable. He was also hugely naive. Himself and his gang members believed they could murder Veronica Guerin, and within a few weeks it would have blown over. They expected a bit of heat. They didn't anticipate at all the massive public outcry, both from government, Gardaí, and of course the general public. And that was a terribly naive move, and Gilligan was just so focused on revenge. He was so focused on being wronged, as he saw it, by this journalist who kind of was relentlessly pursuing him. So he had blinkers, and he let himself be led by his rage.
It was a massive investigation. There were 100 officers working on the case, 30 investigators. They analysed every criminal that Veronica Guerin had written about, that she had spoken to or interviewed during her time as an investigative journalist. But all the information led back to Gilligan and his gang.
The murder investigation was headed up by Chief Superintendent Tony Hickey, and he brought an incisive level of control and focus to it. He'd studied in Quantico with the FBI and with Scotland Yard and knew how to carry out a major investigation of this nature. It was the first time that they used mobile phone tracking to piece together members of the gang to find out who was talking to who, when they were talking. They looked at all the mobile phone traffic on the day of the murder. It was crucial in identifying Russell Warren, who they didn't know. He wasn't known to the guards, and Charles Bowden as well. Neither of these guys had come up on the Garda radar before, and it's quite unlikely any of their underworld informants would have known about them either.
Charlie Bowden, he was a former soldier. He was an expert in guns as a result. He was very interested in guns. He had fallen on hard times. He owed a lot of child support to his first wife. So it's for this reason, kind of out of necessity, he got involved in criminality rather than being brought up as a criminal.
Russell Warren was also part of the gang. He was called the bag man. He was the financial controller, so to speak. So he had a very important job, but he really wasn't respected by John Gilligan. He would have been seen as a weak link.
Neither Bowden nor Warren were hardened criminals in that they'd never served a day in jail. They were very much brought in as backup.
Bowden and Warren are brought in for questioning, and over a number of days they reveal the extent of Gilligan's drug operation and the plot to kill Veronica Guerin.
Well, Russell Warren said that he met Brian Meehan on the morning of the 26th of June 1996, that he handed over the bike to Brian Meehan, that Meehan directed him to go to Nace to look out for a red Opel Calibra car, which was Veronica Guerin's car, because she was due in Nace District Court that day to answer a speeding fine. He said that when he went there, he eventually saw her leaving the court. He said he was in contact by mobile phone with John Gilligan and Brian Meehan all the while. He got into his car and he said he was about 4 cars behind her as she made her way back to Dublin on the Nace Road. He said he then saw Brian Meehan on the motorbike. He was driving the motorbike with the hitman as a pillion passenger.
Charlie Bowden supplied, cleaned the gun, put the bullets in it and gave it to Dutchy Holland. And it was his evidence to the court that Dutchy Holland was the gunman who murdered Veronica Guerin on that day. Dutchy Holland died in prison in 2009 in the UK. He was serving a sentence for a plot to kidnap a businessman. He had denied the murder, but it was the belief of Gardaí and their evidence as well that he was indeed the triggerman.
Across the country, criminal gangs have become more violent and more brazen in their attacks. A new tool was needed to fight organised crime. And after the murder of Veronica Guerin, public outrage and political will was there in order to fast-track the establishment of the Criminal Assets Bureau. The Bureau was an arm of law enforcement with just one goal: to follow the money.
The death of Veronica Guerin touched.
Damn, bro. Nah, this shit crazy. I ain't gonna lie. This shit wicked. I got like that. Like, that's just crazy, bro. This man Gilligan let his raid, like, he really thought he was popping. I mean, he probably was popping. You know what I'm saying? He was popping his shit, doing his shit, selling his shit. And it's just like, bro, you just greed of power. You just get too greedy. You know what I'm saying? You just get too greedy, bro. And you overextend. And I say it from both sides. Like, from her side, I'm not doing investigative journalism. Fuck no. Hell no. That's just a death ticket waiting. You know what I'm saying? It's a high possibility that the shit could happen. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, bro. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.